Well, let's return now to one of the growing stories of this week. Sir Keir Starmer's beers, of course, in Durham on the 30th of April 2021, the same month, of course, as that funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, where the Queen sat alone, the same month that indoor socialising had been banned by the government, and indeed the same month in which the Labour Party was consistently calling for further and stricter lockdown restrictions. Well, joining me now to discuss this over the phone is Madeline Grant, columnist at The Telegraph. Welcome to the programme, Madeline. I mean, this is a story that has been floating around for quite some time, but seems to have found a new lease of life. Could it potentially be the fact that what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have so far been fined for was quite so trivial that is bringing a new microscope to the potential transgressions of the leader of the Labour Party?
Yes, I think that's right, Tom. I think that it's also the fact that for a very long time, I mean, the very moralistic way in which they responded to the allegations against the Prime Minister and the Chancellor was not, they were often really going for it in the way that they were making comparisons about people unable to visit their families. They were really kind of sticking the knife in, as it were. And as you pointed out, there's very little qualitative difference between the two scenarios in question, between what we're learning about events in Durham and what we're learning about and what we already knew about events in Westminster. And I, for one, I'm fed up to the back teeth with these stories. I think that we need to get on to talking about serious issues that matter to the public, but you can't very well add fuel massively to that fire and then expect that it won't also apply to you. And I think, in a way, Labour are now being hoisted by their own petard.
Why do you think it is that the Labour Party at first repeatedly denied, that Angela Rayner was at that event, and only now it's turned out that she was actually there after all?
I don't know exactly the thinking in the Labour Party, but I wonder if perhaps, because for a long time, as you say, the story was in circulation, people were mentioning it, but it hadn't really been followed up in earnest. I wonder if perhaps the Labour Party thought that there wasn't so much public interest in this and that the news cycle would move on to other things and it would be forgotten about. But as I say, I have no insight into what the Labour HQ are thinking about this.
I've been speaking to some Labour Party spokespeople, particularly after Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, when a number of journalists asked the Labour Party spokesman, what is the difference between having a cake in the Cabinet Room, or potentially not even eating that cake that was present in the Cabinet Room before a meeting, and having drinks with work colleagues, with people in the CLP, sort of social drinks? Was it work? Was it social? Is there a big difference? And the only answer that the Labour Party spokesman was able to say is, well, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were fined, and the leader of the Labour Party was not. Now, that doesn't seem to me to be the strongest defence, given that one was investigated over the course of months and one was batted away pretty quickly.
Well, absolutely, completely. And also that I believe that Labour were pointing fingers and assuming guilt before the fixed penalty notice had even been issued. So that doesn't quite wash. I don't think this line of attack is going to hold up, because there are just endless records of Labour taking an incredibly righteous moral line on all of this and acting holier than thou. So I just think that had they been perhaps less vociferous in their condemnations and less sanctimonious about the whole thing, then they wouldn't be in the pickle they're in now. But it really, as you say, the two situations, it's very hard to see what the obvious difference is between them, apart from perhaps that it was the government that was making the rules, but then Labour also overwhelmingly were voting for those rules and calling for more of them at every opportunity. So, no, I don't think it's going to wash at all.